Okay, let's try part two of chapter 7 again, with sound this time. All right, so the focus on the second part of chapter 7 is inequality and the issue of income versus wealth. Now, like most Americans, we've been taught to think of income. How much does LeBron James make? Without thinking, the person that signs LeBron's check has the real wealth in the picture. And the differences between income and wealth begin to frame a lot of disparity of the classes and also between the racial groups here in the United States. In particular, look at the graph 714 about median household income and then net worth at the bottom of that same page, and you start to see the difference in income and wealth. Now, I don't read too much to you, so here I'm on page 206. For most people in the United States, wealth is invested primarily in property that generates no income, such as a home or a car. By contrast, the wealth of elites, the people of the 1%, often have their wealth in the form of income-producing property or investments that make money for them. Wealth is especially important because it can be transferred across generations and increase inequality over time. In other words, I can be the dumb, worthless child of some wealthy person, Paris Hilton, and still have millions and millions of dollars that I actually didn't earn at all. Consequences of inequality, health, mental health, what do we know? We know that those that are wealthy actually do have a better life. They live longer. They're sick less often. When they are sick, they don't stay sick as long as the rest of us. Think about this. For mental health, we've even created a special word for people that are crazy that are wealthy. They're eccentric. Think about that. You don't ever apply that word to a poor person, right? When you're poor, you're just crazy. But if you're rich, then you're eccentric. Housing affects us on a couple of different dimensions. Obviously, if you grow up in a nice house, you've got nice things. But also, your zip code plays a bunch of really subtle impacts on your life. If you're from a good area of town or a bad area of town, that continues to help sort us out in our urban environments as those that are acceptable and unacceptable. Education, obviously, rich kids that aren't very bright. John Kennedy, not the brightest tool in the shed, got to go to Harvard. George W. Bush got to go to Yale. Those were because of their family connections and money, not because they were great students. Here's one that's not in your book, wanted to be in your notes. Bread. Think about that. Bread is also a different way that we do class. Think about the kind of bread that wealthy people eat versus poor people. Rich people eat, artisanal multi-grain bread with nuts and twigs in it and stuff like that. And, the working class eat Wonder Bread. And you go, okay, well, big deal. What's the difference in bread? Well, one's much more healthy, and the other one is mainly just sugar, dough, and water, and isn't very good for us. So class gets replicated across several different dimensions in our lives that we're not even always aware of. Poverty in the U.S., there's the official poverty line, which I don't think your book actually puts it down here. So let's go ahead and for the official poverty line, I believe it's $26,000 for a family of four. So let's go ahead and remember that, $26,000 for a family of four. Now think about that in Austin, you think you could keep yourself and three other people alive on $26,000, rent, food, insurance, lights, cell phone bills, be kind of hard. Two other new terms, absolute and relative poverty. Absolute poverty is you're not being able to just even take care of yourself, not enough food or not enough housing with the money that you possess. Relative poverty is you're not able to keep a lifestyle. You would think, I was surprised about this, You would think that revolutions go up in times of absolute poverty, but they don't. They go up in times of relative poverty. We seem to be able to take it if all of us are having an economic problem and all of us are struggling. But if one group is getting better and another group isn't, that's when you get this kind of, hey, that's not right and that's not fair, and I'm going to have a rebellion about that. Who are the poor? This is another situation where we talk a lot of smack about government, but here's the thing. Right now, since we're in the midst of COVID-19, who's saving the bacon? It's the government. The private sector isn't able to deal with this. They're not able to coordinate things. They're not geared for this kind of stuff. And when we were looking at poverty back in the 1930s, if you were poor, you were probably elderly back in the 30s and 40s. And so they started Social Security. And every 5 or 10 years, somebody says, oh my God, it's always going to go bankrupt and we're never going to have money. They've been saying that since 39, since it came up. But what do we absolutely know about Social Security? Social Security has changed poverty so much so that the elderly, while not doing great on Social Security, keep enough of their income going that they're not starving and going to waste like they were back in the day. Once you were not able to work anymore back in the 30s and 40s, you may not have been able to survive. So now we are taking care of our older people, but that's also changed their profile. Now the poor are young, like kid young. Gender, they're also women. It's called the feminization of poverty. Why is that going on? Well, when a couple splits up, who gets the kids? Mom. Her income doesn't usually go up. She just gets, if it's mom and dad and 2 kids, dad takes off, mom's got 2 people to feed, and her income hasn't gone up that much, even if he is paying court-ordered child support. Ethnically, here's the one that surprises a lot of people. Over 60% of the poor are white. That seems to shock a lot of people. Most of the nation is white. African Americans are disproportionately poor. They make up 13% of the population, but 30-something plus percent of the poor. That's where we get into the disparity of poverty. Know what the term job de-skilling means. We're going to put our new nonsense words to remember are nasal warts. Nasal warts, that's the nonsense word for this chapter, or this part of the chapter. Functionalists, what do they say about inequality? Well, of course, they favor a view called meritocracy, in which they say, well, smart, capable people make more money than, people with low skills like janitors. So that's why we pay heart surgeons more than we pay janitors. When we look at that from the conflict perspective, because that's called meritocracy, when we look at that from the conflict perspective, what do we see? Well, most people inherit their wealth. They don't earn it. So right away, the whole being better than or having more skills, that doesn't seem to make sense. And the highest paid people are hedge fund managers who, funny enough, aren't even right most of the time. But they make a lot of money because they make specific counter investments for their wealthy clients to hedge against inflation or hedge against the market so wealthy people can stay wealthy. You and I generally can't afford that kind of investing option. What do the symbolic interactionists say? Interesting enough here, again, they're not trying to solve world hunger or even look at it. They're looking at things and saying, why is it that we treat the rich differently? We act as if they're different. We have a president. Because of his money, we tolerate a great deal of behavior things because we treat him special because he's got money. Or his perception is that he has money. We give them extra space in crowds. We defer to the wealthy. We think of them as being special. And that maybe we need to look at again. That's the end of this chapter. Hopefully the sound goes with it, and look for chapter 10 next.